Hi, I'm John Huber from MarylandK12.com. This video concludes a 5-part investigative series examining the shooting of teacher Abby Zwerner at Rich Neck Elementary School in Newport News, Virginia. What began as a single gunshot inside a first-grade classroom quickly became a legal, cultural, and moral reckoning for an entire school system. Over the course of this series, we examine the timeline leading up to the shooting, the authority gaps inside the school, the broken safety protocols, and the legal protections that ultimately shielded top leadership from accountability. This final chapter brings everything together. It asks the question that has lingered from the beginning. How did an entire system fail, and why was only one person left to carry the blame? Immediately after the shooting, a first grader spoke words that echo through this entire case. "I told you, I tried to keep you safe." Those words were not symbolic, they were literal. Warnings had been given. Warnings had been repeated. Warnings had been passed to the proper people, and yet, nothing happened. On January 6, 2023, multiple alarms were sounded by teachers and students, but the system, its routines, its culture, and its leadership did not respond. When investigators analyze a major airplane crash, they rarely identify one fatal mistake. Instead, they trace a chain of failures, small oversights, broken systems, and ignored signals that align to produce catastrophe. The Abby Zwerner case follows that same pattern. What happened in that first-grade classroom was not an isolated failure. It was not the result of one administrator's inaction alone. It was the final link in a chain forged by incomplete records, ignored warnings, broken safety protocols, and a culture that prioritized optics and routine over urgency and safety. To place blame on a single individual without acknowledging that chain is to misunderstand the tragedy itself. The warning signs existed long before January 6th. The student involved had a documented history of serious behavioral issues: choking a kindergarten teacher, chasing classmates with a belt, repeated aggression toward staff. These were not minor incidents. They were red flags. But those red flags were never assembled into a complete picture. Critical disciplinary information existed only in the Synergy database, entered through mini referrals, and never transferred into the physical file relied upon by school staff. As a result, no functional behavioral assessment was conducted. No behavior intervention plan was developed. Instead, the school improvised. The student was placed on a modified schedule, a temporary measure without the structure or accountability of a formal plan. Days before the shooting, the student smashed Abby Zwerner's phone in an act of targeted anger. He was suspended and then returned to school on January 6, apparently without a documented reentry conference, without clear conditions, and without a reset of expectations. From the first warning to the moment the gun fired, nearly 2 hours passed. Late that morning, Abby Zwerner warned Assistant Principal Ebony Parker that the student was violent and threatening. According to the grand jury, Parker did not look up from her computer. Soon after, 2 students reported seeing a gun in the student's backpack. A search was conducted, but not of the student's person. Ms. Zwerner then observed the student move something into his pocket. At recess, another student reported seeing the gun. A student told a counselor he was afraid and gave specific details. The counselor asked for permission to search the student. Permission was denied. No lockdown was initiated. No 911 call was made. No decisive action occurred. When the gun fired, it jammed after the first round. There were 7 more bullets in the chamber. Luck, not planning, prevented a massacre. Ms. Zwerner, dazed and bloodied from the shooting, went to the office and collapsed outside the principal's office door. The principal shut the door and offered here no assistance. After the gunfire stopped, the failures did not. They simply moved from the classroom to the courtroom. Investigators discovered missing records, vanished files, and a troubling lack of transparency. One version of the student's file later surfaced in the possession of a central office administrator, incomplete and inconsistent, while the school's copy was never found. Jurors openly questioned whether this amounted to obstruction. Legally, the picture became even clearer. The superintendent, principal, and school board were dismissed from civil liability under sovereign immunity for simple negligence. Only Assistant Principal Ebony Parker remained. In November, a jury awarded Abby Zwerner $10 million, concluding Parker's inaction rose to the level of gross negligence. She now faces 8 felony child neglect charges, 1 for each bullet in the gun. The leaders who shaped the system walked away under the protection of law. We often say tragedies like this are preventable, and yet they keep happening. Why? Because systems are built by humans, and humans are unpredictable. In this case, everything appeared to be in place: policies, reporting mechanisms, administrators, and procedures. And still, it happened. Why? Because safety does not live in binders. It lives in culture. It lives in authority. It lives in the willingness to interrupt meetings, disrupt routines, and act decisively. Ebony Parker was operating inside a culture that permitted inaction. She bears responsibility, but she is not the only one who owns it. To say otherwise is not accountability. It is scapegoating. Ebony Parker's failures are real and indefensible, but accountability cannot stop with her. Newport News had the opportunity to acknowledge systemic failure, settle honestly, and rebuild trust. Instead, it stood aside while one administrator was left to defend herself, even as that defense pointed fingers at teachers and staff. Safety cannot hinge on one meeting or one person. It must be embedded in routines, authority structures, leadership standards, and school culture. And yet, Virginia's standards for school administrators barely mention emergency safety at all. That omission is its own indictment. Until safety is valued as highly as test scores, until warnings trigger action instead of hesitation, until leadership cultures encourage escalation instead of silence, the chain that led to January 6 remains intact. Waiting. The criminal trial begins in May. If Ebony Parker is prosecuted and imprisoned, we must ask, should she be the only one? And if not, what does justice look like when systems fail? The lessons of January 6 cannot end with a verdict. They must change how schools lead, act, and respond before the next warning becomes the next tragedy.